The shrill whistle pierced the summer air like an ice pick. Martin Reynolds froze mid-dive, 1 foot still on the diving board, as Linda Cressley marched across his backyard in her signature beige pantsuit, clipboard in hand, whistle still dangling from her lips. "Absolutely not," Linda shouted, her voice carrying across the crystalline blue pool. "This is an unauthorized gathering. The HOA bylaws clearly state that any gathering of more than 6 people requires pre-approval and a facilities usage form." Martin's daughter Emma slid down underwater, mortified as her birthday party came to a screeching halt. 13-year-old girls in swimsuits froze like statues, dripping pool water onto the pristine concrete that Linda had already begun inspecting for violations. Linda Cressley, known throughout Sycamore Heights as HOA Karen, had been the president of the Homeowners Association for 8 straight years. She ruled with an iron fist inside a beige glove, her reign uncontested because nobody wanted to deal with the minutiae of community guidelines, architectural review protocols, and violation enforcement policies. Nobody except Linda. "Martin, I see 11 children and 3 adults. That's 14 people, which exceeds the maximum capacity guidelines for residential outdoor recreation." Linda flipped through her clipboard. "Not to mention you've installed blue pool lights. The approved colors are white and soft white only." Martin's wife, Sarah, emerged from the house with a birthday cake, stopping short when she spotted Linda. "Oh no," she muttered. "The Reynolds are in violation of sections 8.3, 14.7, and possibly 22.1 of the community guidelines," Linda announced to nobody in particular, though she glanced meaningfully at Mrs. Patel next door, who quickly pretended to be engrossed in her gardening. "Linda, it's Emma's birthday," Sarah said, setting the cake down. "We sent out the paperwork last week. Didn't you get it?" Linda's eyes narrowed. "I received no such paperwork. And regardless, you know very well that pool usage forms must be submitted 15 business days in advance, not 7 calendar days." Martin stepped down from the diving board. "This is ridiculous. It's our pool in our backyard." "Actually," Linda said, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth, "according to the amended bylaws passed last month, all water features are considered community aesthetic resources and subject to community standards and supervision." "What does that even mean?" Martin asked. "It means that while you own the physical structure, the visual and social aspects of the pool are community property." Linda's smile widened. "And as such, I'm issuing a cease and desist on this unauthorized gathering effective immediately." Emma surfaced, tears in her eyes as her friends awkwardly climbed out of the pool, reaching for towels. "You can't just declare our pool community property," Sarah hissed, stepping closer to Linda. "I didn't. The board did. Maybe if you attended meetings instead of scheduling unauthorized gatherings, you know that." Linda made a note on her clipboard. "You'll be receiving a formal violation notice. The fine is $300 plus $50 for the unauthorized lighting." As Linda turned to leave, she paused. "Oh, and happy birthday, Emma. There are still openings for the community center party package. Fully compliant with all HOA regulations, of course." The Reynolds family watched in stunned silence as Linda Cressley strode triumphantly across their lawn, her clipboard tucked neatly under her arm. Emma's friends mumbled awkward apologies as parents arrived early to pick them up, the party effectively ruined. "I'm sorry, honey," Sarah said, wrapping a towel around Emma's shoulders. The teenager shrugged it off and stormed into the house, slamming the door behind her. Martin stared at the pool, with blue lights now seeming like an act of rebellion rather than a decorative choice. "Community property? This is insane." "What are we going to do?" Sarah asked, collecting abandoned paper plates from the patio table. "I'm not paying that fine," Martin said, his jaw set, "and I'm going to find out about this amended bylaw business." The next morning, Martin made his way to the community center where Linda kept an office. The small room, decorated with framed copies of HOA awards and certification, was Linda's sanctuary. She looked up from her computer, seeming unsurprised to see him. "I was expecting you," she said, gesturing to a chair. Though proper procedure would have been to request an appointment, Martin remained standing. "I want to see this amendment about water features being community property." Linda smiled, reaching for a thick binder on her desk. She flipped it open to a tabbed section and turned it around. "Section 17, paragraph 4, subsection C, passed unanimously last month." Martin skimmed the dense text, his frown deepening. "This doesn't say pools are community property. It says they're subject to community aesthetic standards. That's different." "It means the same thing, practically speaking," Linda replied, taking the binder back. "The community, through the board, through me, has authority over how the pool is used and maintained." "That's not what the language says." "I'm on the Architectural Review Committee, the Violations Committee, and I'm HOA President," Linda said, her voice taking on an edge. "I think I know what our bylaws mean." Martin leaned forward. "And I think you're making things up to control people. Why do you care so much about blue pool lights or a kid's birthday party? Something flashed in Linda's eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or anger, before her mask of efficiency returned. Rules exist for a reason, Mr. Reynolds. Without them, we'd have chaos. Property values would plummet. Is that what you want? I'd want to enjoy my backyard with my family without you showing up with a whistle and a clipboard. Linda stood, smoothing her beige blazer. Well, we don't always get what we want. The fine stands, and I'll be doing a follow-up inspection tomorrow to ensure the lighting violation has been corrected. As Martin turned to leave, he spotted something on Linda's desk, a framed photo almost hidden behind her computer monitor. It showed a younger Linda standing proudly in front of a small house, arm in arm with a tall man. They were both smiling. "Is that your husband?" Martin asked, curiosity momentarily overtaking his anger. Linda swiftly turned the frame face down. "Ex-husband," she said curtly. "Will there be anything else?" Martin shook his head and left, but his mind was working. As he crossed the community center parking lot, he noticed a familiar car, Tom Gallagher, who served on the HOA board with Linda. "Tom," Martin called out, jogging over. "Got a minute?" Tom looked nervously toward the building. Sure, but not here. Linda has eyes everywhere." Linda doesn't actually have the authority she claims, Tom Gallagher explained as he and Martin sat in a corner booth at the diner 3 blocks outside the Sycamore Heights community boundaries. Tom kept glancing at the door as if expecting Linda to burst in at any moment. "The board never passed any amendment declaring pools community property. That's absurd," Tom continued, nervously stirring his coffee. "We did update some aesthetic guidelines about exterior fixtures, but nothing that gives the HOA control over private recreational facilities." Martin leaned forward. "Then why is she going around with a clipboard saying otherwise?" Tom sighed, lowering his voice. "Look, the truth is, nobody challenges Linda anymore. 3 of the 5 board members just rubber stamp whatever she puts in front of them. The rest of us get outvoted. Why? What's in it for them?" "Exceptions," Tom said simply. Darren Peterson got approval for his oversized RE parking pad after he started voting with Linda. Carol Winter's non-regulation garden gnome collection miraculously became compliant when she joined Linda's voting bloc. Martin frowned. "That's corruption." "That's homeowners associations," Tom replied with a shrug. "But lately, Linda's been getting worse. More aggressive with enforcements, making up rules on the fly. Your pool incident isn't the first. Why doesn't someone stop her?" Tom laughed without humor. "Who? Nobody wants her job. It's endless meetings and paperwork. And anyone who opposes her suddenly finds themselves with violation notices for cracks in their driveway or non-compliant mailbox posts." Martin thought about Emma's ruined birthday party and the threatened fine. There has to be something in the bylaws about abuse of power. There is, but you need a majority of homeowners to call a special meeting and vote. Tom checked his watch nervously. "I should go." Linda scheduled an emergency board meeting for this afternoon, probably to retroactively pass whatever rules she claimed already existed. After Tom left, Martin sat in the booth for a long time thinking. By the time he returned home, he had a plan forming. Sarah was in the kitchen when he arrived, angrily chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. "Let me just came by," she said without looking up. She issued the formal violation notice and reminded us that the blue pool lights need to be changed by tomorrow. "Did she leave a copy of the violation?" Sarah pointed to a pink paper on the counter, complete with a passive-aggressive note about how disappointed she is in our lack of community spirit. Martin picked up the notice, scanning the cited bylaw sections. Just as he suspected, Linda had referenced sections that had nothing to do with pool lighting or gatherings. One was about trash can placement, another about holiday decorations. "How's Emma?" he asked. "Still upset. Her friend's parents are all talking about the incident. Mrs. Patel told me that Linda's been calling it a dangerous, unauthorized pool party in her emails to the community." Martin's jaw tightened. "Where's our ladder?" Sarah finally looked up from her aggressive chopping. "The garage, why?" "Because," Martin said, a slow smile spreading across his face, "if our pool is community property, then the community should get to enjoy it exactly as I see fit." "What are you planning?" Sarah asked, recognizing the determined glint in her husband's eye. "I'm going to give Linda exactly what she wants," Martin replied, heading for the garage. Complete compliance. Outside, he carefully examined the pink violation notice again before walking to the edge of the pool, where the offending blue lights glowed beneath the surface. The notice specifically cited non-compliant colored lighting. It didn't mandate white lights, just prohibited colored ones. By 7 o'clock the next morning, Martin had disconnected all the colored lights in the pool. In their place, he installed waterproof LED strips with no color at all, just pure, bright white that illuminated every inch of the water with stark clarity. The effect was almost clinical, like the lighting in a laboratory rather than a backyard oasis. But Martin wasn't finished. He climbed onto the roof with a new installation, two massive industrial fans that he'd rented from a construction supply company. These he positioned strategically, angled down toward the pool. "Dad, what are you doing?" Emma asked, watching from below in her pajamas, curiosity temporarily overcoming her embarrassment from the ruined party. "Making our pool compliant with community standards," Martin replied, securing the second fan in place. Next came the piece de resistance. Martin dragged a large chest freezer from his workshop to the edge of the pool. Inside were dozens of ice blocks he purchased from 3 different grocery stores the night before. "Martin," Sarah said slowly, watching as he dumped ice block after ice block into the water, "I get that you're upset, but this seems perfectly reasonable." Martin finished for her, sliding another block into the crystal clear water. "If our pool is community property subject to HOA aesthetic standards, then I'm simply bringing it up to code." By mid-morning, the fans were running at full blast, creating a constant wind that rippled the pool's surface and chilled the surrounding air. The ice had transformed the pool water to a temperature that would have been refreshing in Alaska in January. The bright white lights gave the whole scene an eerie institutional glow even in daylight. Martin stood back to admire his work just as Linda's beige sedan pulled up in front of their house. "Right on time," he muttered with satisfaction. Linda approached, clipboard in hand, expression already set in disapproval. She wore a different beige pantsuit today with a turquoise scarf that Martin suspected was her version of dressing down for weekend inspections. "Mr. Reynolds," she began, then stopped abruptly when the fan's blast hit her, blowing her meticulously styled hair sideways. She raised a hand to shield her face. "What on earth?" "Good morning, Linda," Martin called cheerfully. "I corrected the violations. The colored lights have been removed as specified in your notice." Linda approached the pool cautiously, noting the stark white lights. "What is all this? Why are there industrial fans on your roof? Of those? They're for circulation. Very important for pool health." Linda's eyes narrowed as she spotted the chunks of ice floating in the water. "And the ice?" "Temperature regulation," Martin replied smoothly. "All of it can't grow if the water's cold enough. It's a very eco-friendly approach to pool maintenance." "This is ridiculous," Linda sputtered, trying to smooth her wind-blown hair. "You're clearly being intentionally disruptive." "Not at all," Martin said, feigning concern. "I'm simply maintaining my pool, or rather, our community's pool, according to the highest standards. Since you declared it community property, I assumed you want it maintained with exceptional care." Linda's face flushed. "I never said." "Yes, you did," interrupted Mrs. Patel, who had appeared at the fence separating their yards. "I heard you quite clearly at Emma's party. You said the pool was community property." Linda turned, startled to find they have an audience. Mr. Cheng from across the street was now watching from his driveway. The Wilsons had paused their morning walk to observe the confrontation. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood about Martin's pool transformation. "This is still a violation," Linda insisted, though with less certainty, "creating a public nuisance with noise and—" "But it's not public," Martin interjected. "It's community property, remember? And the community doesn't seem to mind. In fact," he gestured to the gathering neighbors, "they seem quite interested in how their community pool is being maintained." Linda Cressley had never retreated from a homeowner confrontation in her 8 years as HOA president. But as she stood beside Martin's Arctic pool, with curious neighbors gathering and the industrial fans drowning out her attempts to reassert control, retreat seemed like her only option. "This isn't over," she said, clutching her clipboard to her chest like a shield. "The board will discuss this at our next meeting." "Wonderful," Martin replied cheerfully. "When is it? I'm sure many of us would like to attend." Linda's eyes darted nervously to the growing crowd of neighbors. "It's scheduled for next Thursday, but it's not a public forum." "Actually," said Tom Gallagher, who had quietly joined the spectators, "all board meetings are open to homeowners according to Article 3 of our bylaws. Only executive sessions about legal matters are closed." Linda shot Tom a look of pure betrayal before turning on her heel and marching back to her car, the wind from the fans pursuing her like an invisible adversary. As Linda drove away, the neighbors converged on Martin's yard, voices overlapping with questions and comments. "Is your pool really that cold?" asked Mr. Cheng. 38 degrees, Martin confirmed. "Practically a skating rink." "She tried to tell me my holiday lights were too bright last Christmas," Mrs. Wilson said. "Said they were light pollution." "She fined me for having a basketball hoop in my driveway," added someone else. "Called it an unauthorized recreational structure." As neighbors shared their Linda stories, a pattern emerged. She had been selectively enforcing rules for years, often making up violations when none existed. Those who challenged her found themselves subjected to special inspections and mounting fines. "Why have we allowed this?" Sarah asked, bringing out a tray of lemonade for the impromptu gathering. "Because we're all busy," Mrs. Patel said, accepting a glass. It's easier to pay a fine than fight a battle. Well, I'm done paying fines for imaginary violations, Martin declared. And I think it's time we reviewed those bylaws, Linda keeps citing. By afternoon, Martin's backyard had transformed into the headquarters of an unexpected rebellion. Neighbors brought over copies of HOA documents, violation notices, and email exchanges with Linda. Tom provided the official bylaws, which many homeowners admitted they'd never actually read. Emma, witnessing this transformation, gradually emerged from her embarrassment to join the gathering. "Couldn't we have a do-over birthday party?" she asked her parents quietly, "with everyone here." Sarah smiled. "I think that's a great idea, but maybe not in that pool," she added, nodding toward the ice-filled water. As the afternoon wore on, Martin noticed a car driving slowly past their house, Linda's beige sit-in, making repeated passes like a shark circling its prey. On the third pass, she pulled over and appeared to be taking photos with her phone. "She's documenting the unauthorized gathering," Tom said with a smirk. "But there's nothing in the bylaws limiting the number of neighbors who can visit each other's homes. She made that up too." Why is she so obsessed with control? Emma wondered, watching Linda's car. Mrs. Patel, who had lived in the neighborhood longer than most, sighed. She wasn't always like this. After her divorce, when she lost her house in the settlement, she moved here and ran for the board. She was actually quite nice at first, organized community events, started the neighborhood watch program. "What changed?" Sarah asked. "Power," Mrs. Patel said simply. The more she got, the more she wanted, and nobody pushed back. "Until now," said Martin, watching as Linda's car finally drove away. By evening, the neighbors had formed an action committee with a clear plan. Attend Thursday's board meeting en masse, call for a review of all recent fines and violations, and demand a special election for new board members. The community center meeting room had never been so crowded. Typically, HOA board meetings attracted only the 5 board members and perhaps 1 or 2 homeowners with specific complaints. Tonight, nearly 60 residents filled the space, with more standing along the walls and spilling into the hallway. Linda sat at the head of the table, maintaining her composure despite the unexpected audience. She wore her most authoritative pantsuit, charcoal gray instead of beige, and had arranged her papers with meticulous precision. The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging nervous glances. "We'll now call the meeting to order," Linda announced, rapping her gavel with unnecessary force. "First item on the agenda." "Point of order," Tom interrupted, raising his hand. "Given the unusual attendance tonight, perhaps we should allow community comments before proceeding with regular business." Linda's smile tightened. "That's not how we typically run our meetings, Tom. Community comments come at the end after board business is concluded." "Actually," Martin spoke up from the front row, "according to Robert's Rules of Order, which our bylaws specify as our parliamentary procedure, any member can move to amend the agenda at the beginning of a meeting." "I so move." "I second," called Mrs. Patel immediately. Linda's face flushed. "Very well. All in favor of hearing community comments first." Every hand in the room went up except Linda's and those of her 2 loyal board members. Even Darren Peterson, usually her reliable ally, hesitantly raised his hand after glancing around the room. "Motion carries," Linda said through gritted teeth. "The floor is open for community comments." Martin stood, holding up a folder. "I've reviewed our community bylaws thoroughly, and I've discovered some concerning discrepancies between what's written and what's been enforced." He approached the board table, distributing copies of documents. First, there is no bylaw declaring private pools to be community property. Second, there are no restrictions on pool lighting colors. Third, there is no 15-day advance notice requirement for private gatherings. Murmurs spread through the room as homeowners compared notes. Furthermore, Martin continued, "I've collected statements from 23 homeowners who were issued violation notices citing bylaw sections that either don't exist or don't apply to the alleged violations." Linda's knuckles whitened around her gavel. "These are complicated legal documents, Mr. Reynolds. Laypeople often misinterpret." "I'm an attorney," interjected a woman from the back. "I specialize in real estate law, and I've reviewed Mr. Reynolds' findings. He's correct on all counts." The room erupted in conversation. Linda banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. "This is all very irregular," she declared, her voice rising. "If there are concerns about bylaw interpretation, the proper procedure is to submit them in writing to the Architectural Review Committee, which I chair." "That's the problem," Tom said, standing to join Martin. "One person shouldn't have this much concentrated power." Linda chairs 3 committees and serves as board president. There's no oversight, no checks and balances. Linda's face had gone from flushed to pale. "I have dedicated 8 years to this community. I've maintained property values. I've preserved our neighborhood standards. By terrorizing your neighbors," someone called out. "By making up rules," added another voice. By selectively enforcing violations, Mrs. Patel said, rising from her seat. Anyone who challenges you suddenly finds violations on their property. Linda looked around the room, seeming to realize for the first time how much resentment had built up against her. For a brief moment, her carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing something vulnerable underneath. Perhaps hurt, perhaps fear. I have only ever acted in the best interests of this community, she said, her voice quieter now. Without proper oversight, standards slip. Property values decline. Communities fall apart. Communities don't fall apart because of blue pool lights or basketball hoops, Martin said, his voice calm but firm. They fall apart when neighbors stop trusting each other. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Linda straightened her papers, visibly trying to regain her composure. Be that as it may, we have procedures for addressing concerns. This ambush is inappropriate. We tried procedures. Emma's voice suddenly cut through the tension. She stood in the back of the room, unexpected confidence in her bearing. You ruined my birthday party by making up rules that don't exist. When my dad tried to talk to you about it, you threatened more fines. Linda seemed genuinely surprised to see the teenager speaking up. Young lady, this is an adult meeting about community governance. I live in this community too, Emma interrupted. And I'd watch you march around with your clipboard making people miserable for years. Sarah placed a supportive hand on her daughter's shoulder, pride evident in her expression. Tom cleared his throat. I move that we conduct an immediate audit of all violation notices issued in the past year, with fines to be refunded where bylaws were incorrectly cited or interpreted. Stecken called several voices at once. Linda's jaw clenched. That would require extensive review and... All in favor? Tom asked, cutting her off. Hands shot up throughout the room. Even Darren Peterson reluctantly raised his, avoiding Linda's glare. Motion carries, Tom declared before Linda could respond. I further move that we schedule a special election for all board positions to be held within 30 days as provided in Article 7 of our bylaws. Stecken, Martin said immediately. Linda slammed her gavel down. This is outrageous. You can't just. All in favor, Tom persisted. Again, the forest of raised hands made the outcome clear. Motion carries, Tom said. Now I believe we should establish an interim committee to review our current bylaws and recommend simplifications and clarifications. As Tom continued outlining next steps, Linda sat in stunned silence, watching her authority dissolve before her eyes. The meeting that she had expected to control had been completely overtaken. 8 years of unchallenged rule were crumbling in a single evening. After the meeting adjourned, homeowners lingered in the community center parking lot, exchanging contact information and volunteering for various committees. There was an energy in the air, a sense of neighborhood reconnection that had been missing for years. Martin found himself approached by several neighbors suggesting he run for board president. He laughed off the idea, insisting he just wanted fair and transparent governance. As the crowd thinned, he noticed a solitary figure sitting on a bench near the community center entrance, Linda, staring blankly at her clipboard. Martin hesitated, then walked over and sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. Neither spoke for a long moment. I built this place, Linda finally said, her voice barely audible. When I moved here after losing everything in my divorce, this community was struggling. Deferred maintenance, declining property values, no sense of standards. Martin nodded, letting her continue. I organized cleanup days. I wrote grant applications for the playground equipment. I spent countless hours making this a desirable place to live. She looked up, her eyes shining with unused tears. And this is my thanks, a public humiliation. Martin considered his words carefully. The work he did was valuable, Linda. Nobody's questioning that. But somewhere along the way, the rules became more important than the people they were meant to serve. Linda looked away. Without rules, there's chaos. There's a middle ground between chaos and control, Martin replied gently. We just need to find it together.